Welcome back. In this lecture, we are going to learn how to style hyperlinks using pseudo-classes. We already learned about pseudo-classes in the previous lecture, and now we are going to use them for something that you will work with in almost every website, that is nothing but links. First, let's quickly fix this red text that we don't want anymore. So I'm just commenting this. So I'm just adding another comment that is nothing but styling hyperlinks. So now let's say we want to change the colors of all the links in our page. The first thing that might come to our mind is simply selecting the A element. Is for the color, just giving the same thing. As you can see, the links have changed and here and here. However, this isn't actually the best way to style hyperlinks, and the reason is that an A element doesn't necessarily have to be an actual link. Remember, we can create an anchor element without an href attribute. So for example, if I go to here and something like if I create an link here, and here you can say like paste. As you can see here, you can create it without using an href attribute. Okay, so instead of simply selecting every A element, we can use an pseudo class. That is nothing but the link pseudo class. Color same. The link pseudo class actually selects the actual links. In other words, it selects a element that have an href attribute. So this is a better way of styling our hyperlinks. We actually have to remove the underline. That's another common thing we might want to do when styling these links is to remove the default underline. We can do that by using another CSS property called text decoration. So I'm just removing that text decoration to none. And now if we save and reload the page, the underline disappears. So this is something you'll often see in modern websites. The browser gives links a default underline, but we can remove it when we want to create our own link design. Next, we have another very useful pseudo class called visited. A link can have different states depending on what the user doing it. For example, a link can be a normal link, a link that has already been visited, or a link currently being hovered, or a link that is been actually clicked. So let's start by visiting a link. We can write something like this: visited. And in that, I'm just giving the same color. So the color will be same. I'm just giving the same color. This targets the link that the user have already visited. Technically, we could give visited links a completely different color. For example, if I give something called something like this, and when I save this, as you can see, I have already visited this, so the color changed. So I'm just getting back to normal. However, in modern websites, we often doesn't want visited links to look dramatically different. So we can simply give them the same color as our normal links. So the next one would be the hover. It is very important. So I'm just giving the color something like orange red. So I'm just saving it. So when I move my mouse over the link, the color automatically changes. And that's already a very nice effect. but we can do even more. For example, let's make the text bold. I'm just changing the font weight to bold. So as you can see, when I hover this, the text becomes bold and the color also changes. So remember that earlier we removed the underline using text decoration none. We can actually bring it back when the user hovers over the link. So I'm listing text decoration to underline. So when I refresh this, as you can see, the underline came, and this is very common design pattern. The normal link is clean and simple, and when the user moves the mouse over it, we can provide some visual feedback. The text decoration property can actually do more than simply add and remove the underline. For example, we can specify the style of the underline. So we could use like dotted. So as you can see, the underline becomes the dotted one, and we could also change it to wavy. As you can see, it becomes wavy. There are possible, but for a normal website, I usually keep the underline simple. So let's go back to it. Okay. Then finally, we have one more important pseudo class, that is active. The active state represents the moment when the user is actively clicking the link. So let's try something just to see how it works. So I'm just creating an active. The color background color will be black. Color will be in white. So let's make the font style italic. When I click this and hold the link, we can see the active style being applied. As soon as I release the mouse, it came back to normal. So the active style only exits when the element is being activated. The four important link states are link, visited, hover, and active. And there are very important rule here. We should always define them in an order, that is link, visited, hover, and active. You can simply remember them as L, V, H, and A. This order is very important because CSS has rules about which styles take precedence when multiple selectors match the same element. So that's it for today. In the next lecture, we'll move on to another very useful tool that will help us inspect and understand what's happening inside our web pages.